So the government is instituting a fresh probe into Anglo leasing. And while the president declared so himself, questions abound over the results of 3 previous investigations into the financial scandal that is now resulting into a controversial 1.4 billion shilling payment. KTN's John Alan Namu puts this case into perspective.
The beauty of time, especially when it comes to the Anglo leasing saga, is that it gives room for perspective. So that when President Uhuru Kenyatta says this,
all the appropriate agencies to open up fresh investigations,
Kenyans, including himself, can reflect upon this.
Let's call a spade a spade. I think this is the first time that we have had proper, or we believe we might have proper information that might actually lead us to who the true kingpins of corruption are in our republic.
This came before meeting former Ethics Permanent Secretary John Githongo in London to formally receive his dossier on who he and the evidence he gathered pointed to being behind Anglo leasing, or at least behind alleged attempts to slow down investigations.
Very informative. Very, very, very informative.
But it is the fact that his government will initiate fresh investigations into Anglo leasing that begs the question: what new crimes are going to be investigated? Here's why this question is an important one now. Opening up fresh investigations presumes that the investigations that had previously been done had led nowhere. That is not true. 3 separate investigations into Anglo leasing had been carried out, and they all seem to have uncovered damning evidence of just who was pulling the strings. One was the investigation carried out by the Public Accounts Committee that President Kenyatta led. The other was by the Kenya Anti-Corruption Commission led by Justice Aaron Ringera. That too unveiled the names behind the scandal. Ringera seemed within touching distance of the culprits, even getting offers of help to tie up Anglo leasing.
And we have worked closely with many foreign agencies, including the FBI in the United States of America, the Serious Fraud Office in the United Kingdom, the Swiss Attorney General's Office, the Dutch police, and so on and so forth.
6 years later, in 2012, Switzerland would hand over the last batch of evidence on transactions that went through Swiss banks from Kenya, freeze some of the money in these accounts, and opened up its own investigations into Anglo leasing. So there may still be more evidence that Kenya doesn't have to look for, but simply ask for. The other investigation was done by the Kroll Associates firm. It tracked where all the money paid by Kenya in these contracts had gone. A draft report was presented to the Kibaki government, but that was never made public. Those who have read the report say that some of the money led back to specific accounts here in Kenya. So it is likely that those who will be charged with doing these fresh investigations may not really have to investigate anything. That is, unless the theft under those Anglo leasing contracts is ongoing. Or
the pressure that I am putting, especially on the state law office, is that they must up their game. We cannot afford to lose any more cases.
Could it be crimes of obstruction of justice in the state law office losing cases because it didn't adequately defend the republic? Maybe. The former and current attorney generals may have questions to answer in that regard. But obstructions also came from the courts themselves. Remember this?
The suspects then moved it to the High Court of Kenya, where they obtained judicial orders barring the Kenya Anti-Corruption Commission from investigating security contracts, and all Anglo leasing contracts were security contracts, on the ground that matters of national security, of which the Attorney General had given his legal imprimatur and okayed them, could not be investigated because the Kenya Anti-Corruption Commission is part of the executive branch of government and is bound by the decisions of the Attorney General. A wholly ridiculous argument, but nevertheless, it stands.
I stand by what I said.
That today's Uhuru Kenyatta will be the man signing off on a payment that yesterday's Kenyatta said Kenya shouldn't make is no small irony. But the greater tragedy may likely be that the government may once again commit resources to re-investigating a case that it may already have the evidence to close. John Alan Namu, KTN.